It seems that we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new edition of our Flare Builder online workshops. We're already on session 9, and we are going to have a very interesting topic today. The title for this presentation is Meta Transactions Made Easy. Gasless USDT0 transfers on Flare. So for those who don't know, USDT0 is basically the omni-chain version of the very well-known stablecoin USDT. That means that you can actually move this asset very smoothly across multiple chains. And the important part for us today is that on Flare, currently you can transfer these assets without paying any gas fees. So what is like the thing that is on the back end making this magic work is actually meta transactions. And today we're going to cover how to work with this implementation and how you can actually make it work with other ERC20 assets. The reason is because as Flare becomes a sort of interoperable hub for DeFi, of course, we expect a lot of assets flowing from many chains. And really, if you have a way to sponsor the gas fees, it really makes the onboarding experience more smooth. That's for sure, right? So for those who don't know me, my name is Victor Munoz, and I'm a developer advocate at Flirt Network. So let's get started. Before we move forward with the agenda for today's workshop, I just want to remind you that, of course, this is a live session, meaning that we want to interact with our developers, with the people that are trying to learn and improve their skill set for Web3 development. And of course, we will have some space for some Q&A session at the end. But that is not all. At the end, I'm actually going to share a QR code to have a sort of mini test about the concepts that we're going to be studying and learning today. And really, my promise is that if you follow along this workshop, it's going to be trivial to answer those questions real quick. And you can get some really nice rewards. So I think that you should stay until the end and bear with me, and we're going to have some fun. I see a lot of people commenting already on social media, on different platforms, LinkedIn, X, and YouTube. Super happy that you guys are tuning in from multiple platforms. So let's have some fun today. Now, what is really our agenda? Of course, we cannot get started with this workshop without having a really broad introduction and setting up some clear goals, right? Then we're going to quickly recap EIP 3009, which is sort of the magic behind the scenes that allows for these meta transactions with this omni-chain stablecoin USDT0. Then we are going to move forward and do a deep dive for how does a gasless flow actually works, meaning what should I expect from the front end and from the experience of my user, and what should I plug in the back end to make everything work smoothly. And then, of course, we're going to have a live demonstration of the setup of our front end and our relayer to transfer USDT0. And we're actually going to test this live on mainnet. So it's going to be very beneficial because usually you see most of these workshops are on testnet for obvious reasons. But today, I just wanted to take it a step forward and that we have some fun on chain, on mainnet. And by the end, we're going to discuss most likely the best practices, of course, and the next steps. I think that this is crucial for everyone that is trying to build on Flare and is a new developer, is how I take this knowledge from these very interesting workshops and turn it into an idea, a business, a project that I can then try to monetize, right? And of course, we will have some time for Q&As like I mentioned before. Now, let's move forward. What is really, from a technical point of view, our goal here with this workshop? First of all, I really, really want you to understand what are meta transactions and what is this EIP 3009 that makes all of the magic, right? And then I want you to understand how you can build this gasless user experience for USDT0 on Flare. Like I mentioned before, we do have this gasless flow implemented already on the mainnet. We're going to talk about this in 1 second. But then I just want to clarify that I also want you to run on your own a full end-to-end demonstration with this gasless flow. I'm going to do it today. It's going to be fairly simple and straightforward. I have prepared all of the materials for you to do it, but I want you to test it out and try maybe with other ERC20 tokens. And of course, we can later on discuss what are really the next steps for this flow. Now, if you look at the screen right now on the slide, you will see that in my background, there is some sort of portal information. And this is from the website that I have on the bottom left, which is castle.s. So if you go to that website, what you will see is exactly what I have on my screen on the background. And you will be able to connect your wallet, then set an account address towards which you want to send funds, then and then input the amount that you want to send, and then you can just click send, and you don't need to have any Flare in order to execute these transactions. This is all the magic about meta transactions and how we are implementing this on Flare with USDT0. Like I mentioned, the reason is because if we're gonna become this interoperable hub, we really need to find ways to make the onboarding experience super easy for people that are coming from other chains and from other ecosystems. So I would 100% recommend you to go now and test out like Gassel.s and see how smoothly the experience is. And if you want to know all of the details, of course, this is your workshop to understand this. So now let's move forward and explore what are meta transactions really. So let me tell you something. The first time that I heard about this concept, it wasn't really obvious. But if you tell me gasless transactions, of course, I am familiarized with that and I kind of understand that immediately. That means that, you send a transaction and from the point of view of the user, you don't need any native token for paying the gas fees, whatever network you're working in, right? And in this case, of course, this is focused on Flare. But the important concept behind meta transactions that I want you to really understand is and reflect upon is the fact that in this kind of flow, what we are really doing is separating the authorization of an action, usually performed by the user, from its execution. In this case, the execution is going to be taken care by a relayer, right? So in such a way here, what you would expect is you will let users sign an off-chain message, and hopefully it's a clear message that they understand what they are signing. We're going to talk about that later on. Then on the back end, you will have a relayer that submits these on-chain transactions and takes care of paying the gas fees. Again, if you don't understand fully the benefits, first of all, if you're on Flare and you're onboarding a new user, of course, that user will have no need to have Flare tokens on his wallet when he's doing this interaction, right? And of course, this will provide a streamlined onboarding depending on what kind of application you're building or what kind of service you are providing. And it's in general, it's a better user experience for dApps and users, right? So this is something that we need to really embrace in the sense that the future will likely be like this with a lot of applications that not only are decentralized but offer a sort of Web2 experience. And Web2 experience, you don't pay for gas fees, right? I mean, you sign for things, you click on buttons, whatever. But all of these things of having the on-chain transaction and what you're signing and whatnot, we really need to find better ways to provide a better experience for our users, right? So that's why I think this workshop is going to be very beneficial for you. And in case you are, you like to learn from visuals, I prepared some small image here on the bottom that has like exactly this workflow. So you have your user with his wallet, right? He will provide a signature. It will sign a payload via this EIP 712. I am going to explain what that is, so no need to panic at this moment. And then we will be signing something that a relayer is going to take, validate, and then build a transaction and pay for the gas fees. And then the tokens will move and the transaction will get executed on the Flare network, in which will obviously settle as well. So let's move forward. What is EIP 3009 thing? Okay, this is essentially just a set of functions that enable this meta transaction flow, some interactions with ERC20 token contracts via signatures conforming to this standard EIP 712 type messaging signing specification. Okay, it doesn't sound super clear what this EIP 712 typed message signing specification is, but no worries. This EIP is just a standard procedure for hashing and signing of certain type structured data as opposed to just ByteStream. So think about this. Have you ever interacted with a Web3 application in which at some point they ask you to sign something, which it doesn't look like this, the transaction itself, but it just looks like some weird numbers and things that you, a human, cannot read, really? And so what this standard does is really providing like a standard procedure for hashing and signing this, and that the user on the front end, when he interacts, sees everything clear instead of just this hexadecimal type of data, right? And well, essentially this EIP 3009, you can think about it as an ERC20 extension, including a very important function that we're going to be exploring today, which is called transfer with authorization. So some of these key features is that the signatures will be conforming to this EIP 712 type message signing specification, which, like I mentioned, is just to make it easy for users to read. Then, of course, there will be a valid after and valid before parameters, which are essentially the timestamps. Uh, Essentially, this is like the time window for your transaction to be valid, right? And very important, a nonsense for replay protection, right? We want to make sure everything is safe, and nonsense are the way to go with it. Uh, Okay, so if you go to into exploring further this EIP 3009, like I mentioned, you will find this function transfer with authorization. And on top of that, there is another very important function, which is called receive with authorization. Let's go first with the transfer with authorization. So here, essentially, it's a function to execute a transfer with assigned authorization, right? Well, just like we have been explaining before. So the parameters you will have a from, which is the payer's address or the person that is going to authorize the transaction. Then you will have the parent two, which is the payee's address. You will have the value, which is the amount to be transferred, the time after and before this is valid, right? Which is the parameters that I mentioned there, valid after and valid before, the nonsense, and of course the triplet of the signature V, R, and S. And so if you take a look at the function, it would look just like what I'm showing on the screen. And don't worry, we're gonna be showing this on detail during the hands-on session. Just note that the arguments VRS must be obtained using this EIP 712 type message signing specification. And now let's talk about there is other function, receive with authorization, because, okay, if we want to do these gasless transfers on Flare with USDT0 with a user signing, we will use this transfer with authorization. But then the question is, what if I want to turn this thing into something that, can I maybe charge a small fee for providing this service? Then you would end up relying on this receive with authorization, because essentially this function, as described on the screen, receive a transfer with assigned authorization from the payer. And you can think about this as a way for the recipient or a third party to actually pull tokens, right, or charge a service fee. So we're going to see a basic implementation of this as well, but most of this workflow is going to be left as a sort of homework. I'm just going to show you the basic for receive with authorization. And today I'm going to focus on the transfer, gasless transfers itself. Now, let's move forward. So what is a gasless flow and how does this look like? Like, what should I expect? What should our user expect? Here is everything you need to know about this. Now, on the front end, of course, you will have your client with his wallet. He's going to be signing, interacting with the front end, right? And here you will build the EIP 712 payload. I'm just going to refer to this as payload going forward because it's too long. And then we will have a relayer, of course, that will receive and validate this information and then submit the transaction once it has checked everything. And then, of course, on Flare is where the transaction gets executed and where it settles and validated and all that. So in terms of the stack on the front end, we're going to be using today React plus EtherJS, which is one of the most famous library to interact with the blockchain, right? And yeah, like I said, on the front end, we have this, the build of the payload. We will have, obviously, the wallet signature prompt, and then we will post to the relayer, right? And then on the relayer, we're going to set up some very basic server with Express. And again, we're going to use EtherJS, and we will verify this payload and then call this important function, transfer with authorization, and then pay the gas fees on Flare. So in order to do this, you will need to have an externally owned account with Flare tokens, right? That take care of sponsoring the gas. And yeah, I think that now we're at the stage in which we can easily do a sort of high-level walkthrough of the code before we actually go and test everything with a hands-on session. So look, essentially here, there are a bunch of files, but the ones that are important for you is the .env, of course, in which for the front end, you will have the address for the USDT0 contract, and you will have the relayer URL, right, which is your endpoint essentially. And then the other important file that we are going to be touching today is one that is on the source on the file that is called app.tsx. And essentially, we have like 4 or 5 relevant steps to check, which is the state and inputs. And then this is something that React hooks for the user form. And then we will have the EtherJS setup, connecting the wallet, browser provider, and designer, and then the configuration for building the domain and types for transfer with authorization, and then signing the type data, uh, and produce these BRRs, triplet signature components, and then relay the call, right? Essentially, fetch this with a JSON payload. And that's pretty much it. On the screen, what you are seeing is essentially what we are going to be exploring directly with the code. And this is a screenshot that I took from VS Code, right? This is what I'm going to be using today in terms of like tooling. In terms of dependencies for this, yeah, you don't need anything like too special. Node.js and package manager and all that, like standard things for working with these common libraries, right? Now, one thing that I want to emphasize is what happens on chain. Look, USDT0 contract is already deployed, right? So we really don't have to do anything on chain if what we just want to do is take these functions and interact with them, right? And this is done by the USDT0 ABI. So sorry about that. So essentially, if you don't know what this is the first time you have ever heard about this term. Listen, don't worry about it. This is how to talk to the on-chain contract. It's the only thing that matters to you. And how would you find that if you want to go and check on-chain this ABI? So super simple. What you would do is you would go to the Flare Explorer. You would type USDT0 and find the contract. Make sure you're checking the valid contract, of course. And then you will see this image that I have in front when you click on contract, and you can see all the code that is verified. And at some point, there is a button there that says ABI. So you grab that, you copy that into your code, and you're all set. You have to put that for interacting with both your relayer and your front end. Why? Well, for your relayer, your contract needs the ABI so that it knows which function selector to send when you call the transfer with authorization the function, and then how to encode and decode the returned data of the receipt. Just how to communicate with the thing. That's as simple as that. Then on the front end, the ABI tells EtherJS how to format the JSON RPC call when you read the field name, and what the return type of name is, so it can give you back a string, and how to build your EIP 712 domain. So fairly straightforward. We're going to see the code in just a few minutes, but I just want you to understand that how you can plug this, because if you want to play with another ERC20 contract, really you follow this exact same procedure. And if you're playing with something that is already on chain and verified, you will just grab that other ABI from that other contract, paste it into the code that we have, then just call it. Of course, make sure you are calling the right contract. We're going to see the address as well, and you are all set. You can reproduce this for other ERC20 tokens as well. Relayer walkthrough. Okay, the relayer is kind of the same thing in the sense that we only have like two main files that we are going to be exploring today. One is obviously the .env. Why? Because on our .env, we will have the Flare RPC URL. We will have the USDT0 address, right? We will have the relayer private key. So this is a funded, externally owned account that is going to pay for the gas fees. I already have this set up. So when you do this, of course, if you find on the GitHub, you're not going to see my private key, right? You're not going to see the .env with the private key of my externally owned account. This is something that you don't want to share. And but you need to have some real tokens in order for this to work. Not that many. Flare is extremely cheap and fast, so super simple. I have it like with 10 Flare tokens. It's incredible. Now, then the main file is going to be index.ts. We will have Express server, nothing out of the world, super simple, straightforward kind of code. We're going to walk through each step as well, so no worries. Then we will have, of course, our EtherJS setup with the JSON RPC providing the wallet and the contract, and then the post and relay transfer, which is probably the most interesting part of the workflow to destructure the components of the payload and the signatures, and then call the transfer with authorization on USDT0, and then wait for the transaction, return the hash, right? So this is the whole workflow. And I think that now we are right on time for doing our live demonstration. So guys, here is where I want you to scan this QR code here, and you will be prompted to a GitHub repository that I created and that we're going to be following today to do this live demonstration. So in terms of like what are the commands, whatnot, it's going to be fairly simple. We're going to start our relayer with this npm run start. We're going to launch our front end with npm run dev. We are going to then, that's pretty much it in terms of like really coding, because everything is there, right? So then we're just going to show how to interact, right? We are going to fill the form. We're going to sign with MetaMask. For this purpose of the workshop, I'm just going to use MetaMask as my wallet. I usually do that when doing anything related to development. And I see that our people from Flare Networks are already sharing the link there. Amazing. I really appreciate that. And then you can just check the USDT0 transfer on the Flare Explorer. We're going to do that as well. So look, really, this is set up in a way in which anyone can actually do this kind of thing, even if you're a newbie, right? So if you go here and check out like the GitHub repository, You will see the description of the gasless USDT0 demonstration. You will find a step-by-step guide, which is essentially mostly what we're going to be covering today. So I'm going to assume that you clone this with this command, and then if you open this with the Visual Studio Code, which is what I'm going to be using, this is what you will see. So as you can see here, we have like two main folders, one that says front end, another one that says relayer, and then we have our .env example. So the .env example is something that you want to copy on both other folders for the front end and the relayer, right? And essentially it has the relevant components here. We have the Flare RPC URL. Like I mentioned, this is something that I'm going to be doing on mainnet. So I just added the one from mainnet. If you want to do it on testnet, you change that. You can go to our Flare developer hub and easily find all of this information. Then the USD0 address, like I said, you can find that on the Explorer as well, fairly simple, or in the official documentation, actually, both from Flare and from USDT0. That's what I recommend. And then, of course, you have your relay private key. This is something that obviously I'm not going to show. Like I said, I have my own wallet, externally owned account, my own MetaMask with funds to implement this. And then you have the front end wiring, which is the USD0 address and the relayer URL. I'm just going to leave this untouched, right? So I have here my terminal. And like I mentioned before, the first thing that we want to touch is actually our relayer, right? So on our relayer, the relevant part that we want to set up is, no, what should we do first, the relayer or the front end? Good question, huh? I'm gonna do first the relayer, of course. That makes more sense to me. Okay, so we're gonna go to this script index.ts and let's check it out. So listen, what we have here is the entire code that you will find on GitHub, but I kind of wanted to do an experiment and I added comments on almost every single line of code. Listen, I don't really recommend doing this because it looks like it's too much, right? I would just add a few comments for the main pieces, right? Like it says here, one, two, following the flow. But for today, I just wanted to make something that is crystal clear for anyone that has never even touched any of this stuff, right? So, I'm adding comments even for the imports, right? So import express here for express. This is just a web server framework to handle the HTTP request. And why I'm using this library course for enabling this cross-origin resources sharing, so on and so forth, right? Like I mentioned, for today's workshop, really, it's going to be fairly simple. We just want to install the dependencies and run, right? And let's go over the flow, though, so that everybody's on the same page. So the first piece here is going to be load and validate your components, right? So this is the relevant piece that essentially grabs all the required runtime configuration in one place and provides a sensible default for the server port. If there is any error here, we will see it, and it's going to be crystal clear that things are not working properly. And let's see, what else do we have here? Then we have to set up our Ether.js. We want to just talk with the Flare network. We want to have the relayer wallet that combines that talk channel with the signing key and the USD0 in our on-chain USD0 token wired up so that we can then call the function USD0 transfer with authorization, right? This is this piece of code here. Now, what I would do if I were you is just uh, run each one of these commands that I'm going to be doing right now, and don't worry about, maybe you can actually, as an exercise, you can comment on this on your own. These comments are not provided on the GitHub because I felt it was too much. But okay, moving forward. So first thing, we load our variables, then we set up Ether.js. Then, of course, we want to create our Express app to have the server. and we install the course middleware and built-in JSON body parser. The thing is that we will have different ports, and we want to communicate this with no issues with our front end. That's what we are doing here. Uh, and we are adding a health checkpoint. I think this is extremely important. Look at this line of code here. If I run the relayer and everything is okay, once I open this, I should see something that says Gasless relayer up and running, right? This is what it is doing here. Uh, Gasless transfer route. This is probably the most important part. Essentially, here you will turn the signed payload from the user into a real on-chain USDT0 transfer. You will wait for the confirmation and then return the transaction hash or an error if anything bad happens, right? So we are extracting here the properties from the JSON request body here, then calling the USDT0 contract of transfer with authorization. And here are, look at this. These are the exactly same fields from this EIP 3009 that I showed you before. I'm just setting here some sort of gas limit. Then, yeah, it's all about waiting for the confirmation of the transaction, sending a response back, and if there is any error, of course, we want to log the full error object on the server console for debugging, very important practice. And then you just want to start your server, okay? So this will call the Express application to start an HTTP server that listens for incoming requests. This is very simple. It doesn't have like anything else that you have to configure or whatever. So we're just gonna go here. You're going to open your terminal. We are going to move. Let's corroborate what we are seeing here. We are seeing, I'm doing ls command here. We are seeing the front end and the relayer. So I'm going to move to the relayer here. Now that I'm on relayer folder, I'm just going to do npm install, right? Because I just want to make sure everything is there. I already have it, but just in case, and now it's going to be as simple as doing npm run start, and things should work. Let's pray for things not to break because it's a live demonstration. And as you can see, we have this green check, relayer listening on this port here. What happens if I click? Can I click here? Of course you can. And what you will see, look at this, localhost 3000, and we see this message, gasless relayer up and running. That means that everything is working as expected on the side of our relayer, right? So what we would do next is go back to the code where our main front end piece. So what I'm going to be doing now is just open a new terminal, right? You have one terminal for the relayer that is called here node, it says node relayer, and the other one that says just PowerShell, whatever. The name, you can rename that, right? But one is for your relayer, another one is for your front end. So let's just do that. Let me do here cd front end. Okay, here again, we want to make sure we have all our dependencies and whatnot. So npm install, everything should work, no issues. And now should be as simple as running the command npm run dev, right? So let's see if this is working now. It says local 5173 should be working. So what happens if we follow this click? There you go. Okay, it's up and running. Let's go back though to the code so that we are on the same page. Where is this actually taking place and what it's doing, right? So if we click here on app.tsx, we will see the entire application on React. Again, I did this crazy thing of adding comments even on the imports. I don't think it's necessary. Actually, give me your feedback or maybe on DMs or on public, whatever, if you find like this is a helpful thing or not, because I'm gonna consider for the next workshop as well. I don't know if people actually like to see all of these comments. I think that if you're a complete newbie, this would help you. Otherwise, it can feel a little bit cluttered, to be honest. But essentially, we have three different imports here, one for USDT from React, another one for EtherJS with all the relevant tooling that we need for interacting with the blockchain, right? And then we have the USD0 API, which we get from this USD0 JSON. Very important thing here, this USD0 JSON is the thing that I actually got from the Explorer, right? So this is something that if you create your own code for your own ERC20 contract, you might want to change, right? So let's go back here. Like I said, you can find that easily on the Explorer. Maybe I can show you later. Then what's happening in terms of the code? Okay, of course, you have to supply the values in your .env file. In this case, for the front end, is the USDT0 contract address and the URL uh, and of the relayer, and you should be pretty much up and running with that. Then obviously, you have to check for the injected Ethereum provider. In my case, is MetaMask, right? So this function here takes care of that. And then comes like the relevant part of the workflow on the front end. So first is like the provider and signer, right? So you connect to the user's wallet, you prompt a MetaMask to request the account access, create the signer for signing the payload and transaction, and then fetch the user's address from the signer. Second step of this workflow, domain and types for this payload, right? So you prepare the structured data for signing. We're going to see exactly what are we signing on the front end. So we fetch the current chain ID, we instantiate the USDT0 contract, so you can read the name, build the domain separator fields, and define the typed data structure for our authorization, right? So these are the same fields of the transfer with authorization function that we have seen before. Then this is just a matter of building the payload message, get the timestamp. Remember that this has a valid time window. Maybe you can change that on your own. I'm just leaving it here for 1 hour, and then create your nonsense and assembling this EIP payload message object. And I think that that's pretty much it for this part. And then you just have to sign the EIP 712 payload, trigger the wallet, get back, the signature, split the raw signature into its triplet components for the on-chain use. And then if you're asking, well, Victor, you show me on the screen some messages on the front end and whatnot, where is all of that? Well, this is essentially on this piece here, basic UE for demo purposes. Of course, you can make this much more beautiful. I'm not a front-end software developer, so I did something very basics. For me, the most important part for you to remember is just the post the signed payload to the relay, which is this final piece in which you send a post request with the authorization, payload, and signature. So here's the code that does all of that. Of course, it has some error handling as well. And on success, it will parse the JSON response to get the transaction hash. So you would see if everything is correct, we might see an on-chain transaction hash here. Now, let's move forward to the part in which we interact with this thing, right? We set up our relayer, we set up a front end with React and EtherJS. Now we have this thing and we want to use it. So I'm gonna go here to my MetaMask, just gonna quickly copy here a wallet address that I want to send this, and I'm gonna stay here on the Flare mainnet network connected. And as you can see here, I have 3 USDT0. I have no Flare, so I have no tokens to send this transaction. It would be impossible if this is not working. This is going to fail, right? Because I just don't have any Flare tokens on my wallet, and I'm gonna send this transaction. So I'm gonna copy here the recipient, the person to which I want to send these funds. I'm gonna fill the amount, which is just one. This is just for testing purposes. And then I'm just gonna click on send Gasless, right? So look at this. We have a signature request that just prompted. review request details before you confirm. Very, very important. So look at this. We have the message primary type transfer with authorization from user to this other address, which I call dev. We have the value, the timestamp, the nonsense, and whatnot. So if we don't have if we don't have this would have been a mess, right? This looks something that is human readable, but other without using this EIP, it wouldn't look like that, right? So I'm just gonna click here on confirm, and what happens next is that the transaction gets sent in super, super fast, and we actually get a message on our local host that says sent on chain transaction hash, and it's giving me here the hash, right? So what I want to do now is I'm gonna click OK, and I just want to make sure that we have everything working on chain. So I'm gonna click my wallet. I'm gonna go here where it says view on Explorer. And here it is my wallet from the user. And if I go to token transfer, what I will see is that there was a transfer 40 seconds ago, uh, from this address to this address. I didn't pay for any Flare tokens. It was paid by the relayer, right? So this is my user wallet. If you check out here at the tokens, I now have two USDT0 tokens. I used to have three, and this was a transfer without gas on mainnet on Flare. What a beautiful thing. So I think that that pretty much completes our workflow here. Let's go back to this and see what else do we want to explore, right? Because essentially we run everything uh, from the backend side to the front end, and we tested the flow. So this is a full demonstration. So this enables gas sponsorship, right? So this let your relayer to cover for the Flare fees on behalf of your user. Now, something that you might want to check out in production, like in a more realistic scenario, is to hook this into your backend. If you have a decentralized application, you just change the pointer, right? And you might want to add a sort of batching for the transactions, and you can subsidize multiple transactions, right? And then let's talk about something that for me is very interesting, which is what are the possible monetization strategies? Think about it. I'm onboarding users from other chains to Flare, and then I can establish maybe a sort of basic subscription model. How would that work? Maybe you just have a flat fee for unlimited gasless transfers per month, right? So user can do, I don't know, they pay $5 and they get 1,000 free transactions from any chain to Flare. And it's something that I would consider really. And then you can have something maybe more simple, which is per transfer fee, which is essentially a small charge or percentage taken by the relayer on each transfer. And here is with this other function, receive with authorization, becomes very, very important, right? You would have to add a sort of fee sponsor wrapper, so a small smart contract that takes care of once the transaction, you are requiring the transaction, you're splitting one part with the fee for the relayer and another for the recipient, right? And that would be pretty much it, right? And then you can explore some partnership and white labeling to license your gasless framework to other dApps. That's another thing. So again, I want to spend maybe 1 minute with this receive with authorization function and how this fee sponsor might look like. Again, I want to stress that this is something that I want you to explore. I don't want to do it on my own. Actually, is not available on the GitHub repository that I share. But if you go to SRC on the relayer and click on contracts, you will see here fee sponsor, which is precisely this smart contract that would utilize this minimal interface for ERC20 tokens with this EIP gasless transfer extension to have to have not only a gasless experience, but to actually take the fee. So here you see the function receive with authorization, and here you can have the fee sponsor, right? So this contract is fairly simple. I think that I added here everything with comments. I think you can actually prompt this quite easily if you want, maybe with an AI tool. And the relevant function would be a sponsor receipt, right? So it essentially has the from to IUIN 256, which is the total value. The total value is the sum of the net plus fee. So this is like in the token smallest unit. So essentially here you have the total amount. And then the other important component, well, you have the triplet signature, the nonsense, and then you have the part which you pull total value from the user into this contract with this EIP, right? So, you have to compute the fee and the net amounts and whatnot. Fairly simple, I would say. And then you just have to pay the fee to the relayer or the message sender, and in the same token, of course, send the remaining tokens to the intended recipient, right? Uh, Fairly simple with this workflow that I showed here. And I want you to explore that. Like I said, this is not part of the main repo of the repository, but you can easily do it on your own. Oops. Uh, yeah, I think that we completed all of the steps. Congratulations to all of us. Now, if you want to learn more about Flare, of course, you can visit first our Dev Hub in this QR code on the left. It's one of the best documentation that you can find in Web3, to be honest. It has a bunch of guides to help you get started, creating a different decentralized application, utilizing our different products for with enshrined oracles. And then, of course, if you want to stay on top of the latest news, I encourage you to follow our official X account. So for that, you scan the QR code on the center. And if you want to join the community, we have some fun moments on Discord, so you can scan the QR code on the right, and I will be there. So if you have any questions after this workshop as well, you can just do that, join there, and I will be there, and you can ask me things. So I think we are on time for the Q&A. We're gonna do now a short Q&A, and then I'm gonna share the QR code for you guys to take a small test and have this possibility on earn rewards, right? So I really want you to consider this because the rewards are actually quite nice. Uh, do we have any questions here? Let me see. I'm looking at the screen and I'm looking inside the feedback. So we have like, oh yeah, like what are the best practices when running all of this? That's a good question. So first of all, make sure you visit the GitHub repository and have all of the dependencies, right? So install npm, Node.js, all that stuff. Like I think that everybody that is into Web3 development already had this, but just in case, always the dependencies first. You can check out a guide also on the Flare Hub, on the developer hub. We also have one guide for this. And don't expose any of your private keys. I was very explicit on what not to show when it comes to this externally owned account with the private key that is going to sponsor the gas. So don't do that. Make sure you have your nonsense set up and that you don't have any sort of risk on the replay attacks, and you should be fine with that, to be honest. Next question, and probably the final one is this EIP 3009 the only way to get meta transactions working? Hmm. You know what? I was talking with another developer the other day, and he was using this other thing, which is this ERC 2771, which is Secure Protocol for Native Meta Transactions, a contract interface for receiving meta transactions through a trusted forwarder. So this is another alternative, and you can implement all of this sort of gasless flow with this as well, I would say. Here, the difference, though, is that what you're really doing is receiving this transaction, but through something that you already know is a trusted party, right? It's a trusted forwarder, and you can visit this on the EIPs of Ethereum, and you will find like the abstract, the motivation, the definition. Like it's fairly, I would say, straightforward as well. You can utilize that as well. You have a full example here. On our case, we are following everything for USDT0, which uses this ERC 3009, which I think is actually more new. But this is for these other two functions: transfer with authorization, which is what we showed before. This function here, uh, sorry, the function is here. Oh, it's here. Transfer with authorization, and also you have this other one, which is receive with authorization, which allows you to take the fee. So you can utilize whatever you want. This workshop, for obvious reason, is based on these two methods, but you can check out this other thing, and it's quite interesting. So yeah, I think that now I want to go to the fun part. What is the fun part? It means join, scan this QR code here and take a very short quiz. It's going to be multiple choices. It's going to be super simple. And if you follow this workshop, you can do this in 10 seconds, and you can get a full Flare merge set. Listen, I'm gonna participate on this because I really want this merch for myself as well. I see that people are sharing the type form with a link on the streaming as well. And I see some final question. Maybe, sorry, remind me again if you have mentioned currently the fee sponsor is by Flare. Okay, great question. Let me clarify that. If you go to the Gassel portal, then yes, we are sponsoring this so that people can move their USDT0 through that portal and send it to friends, send it to whoever they want for free. Now, if you want to set this up for your own service, of course, you're going to have to be the one paying the fees with another externally owned account. So to summarize, to send it on the Flare portal, you can do it for free. So you can share that with your friends. But if you want to incorporate that in your DApp, you probably have to set up your own relayer in the same way that I'm doing it right now during this workshop. So thank you so much, guys. It was super, super fun. I think that we're going to do this on another time. And if you have more questions after this workshop, you can find me on social media fairly easy. I go by the name of 0x Quantic, and keep building, guys. This is an exciting time to build in Web3. Flare has all the tools, all the resources that any developer might need, and join the fun. Thank you so much.